Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Commanding Lore, spicing up the most flavorful format, EDH, with some decks constructed with the story in mind. As always, I'll be joined by our resident commander captain here on the hub, Paul from the PlaneswalkerProject. But before we see his magic in action, let's discuss the lore topic for this deck tech. Today's commander lore tech will be based around a godly figure in Magic the Gathering. Not that one. Think less shiny, but still kinda a scumbag. It has no grand title or purpose like most gods found across the multiverse. Despite the buzz it stirs, it's the relatively humble Locust God. Now for a little background before the main course. When I say the Locust God doesn't hold some arbitrary title or purpose like the other gods of Amonkhet, or even those found on Theros, I mean it. In fact, this creepy crawly creator doesn't even have a name anymore, only being referred to as the Locust God because of, physical attributes that make it look, well, come on guys, you can figure it out, it looks like a damn bug. So what do we actually know about the Locust God? Simple answer? Not much. Outside of it loves creating smaller versions of itself like Cell, and really hates the other 5 real gods of Amonkhet. But that's a little oversimplified. We actually know that the Locust God, along with its buggy brothers, were once part of the great pantheon of Amonkhet, numbering 8 strong. 8 animal-headed gods watching over regular and other animal-headed mortals. Yeah, standard Magic the Gathering logic right there. Anyway, like the more normal gods of Amonkhet, like Kefnet the Mindful, the Locust God once was a protector of the plane and champion of its people. But all that changed when Nicol Bolas arrived and did what he does best, destroy and manipulate. In that order, no less. Bolas's plan is far too sophisticated for our mere mortal brains to even comprehend. Fantastic writing as always, but he needed Amonkhet for something. Only problem was that these pesky gods were trying to do the right thing. Bolas hates that. So, using his immense power, he literally obliterates the minds and bodies of the gods, taking their mana leyline-esque forms and bending the strands to his will. The result? Mind-wiped gods who saw Bolas as their creator, who tasked them with creating worthy champions in his name, preparing for the day he returns. This was exactly Bolas's goal, the formation of an unstoppable army. The gods doing the heavy lifting was just a happy bonus. But that wasn't a job for 8 gods, oh no. Bolas is a forward thinker. He knows plans don't always go as planned, and it's always good to have some backup. So he takes 3 of the gods and stores them like tools in a shed. This isn't some clever analogy I just came up with. This is literally what the dragon thought as he took the Scorpion, Locust, and Scarab God away from mainstream Amonkhet. To finish everything off, he completely reworked the mind and behavior of the Locust God, unlike the 5 original gods, whose memories were basically the only thing he tampered with. He then turns around and kills all the mortals of the plane who weren't toddlers, so stories of these events wouldn't be passed on. Pretty brutal. And he left about his merry way to wait for his plans to unfold. Now, as a part of his fictional legend he left with the 5 remaining gods, Bolas prophesied his return in the Telling of the Hours, a series of events that would herald his coming. Each of these lost bug gods would play a role in the Hours, but the Locust God's premiere would take place during the Hour of Promise. Supposedly, the great god pharaoh would return and destroy the protective Hekma of the city, his protective barrier that kept the wilds, well, in the wild. This was supposed to reveal Paradise Beyond, but of course Bolas is a big stinky liar, and none of that was true. It was just more dusty nothingness. This was the job of the Locust God, sending out his little minions to gnaw at the Hekma until it was nothing but a tattered shell, allowing zombies, worms, and of course the gods to ravage the city unimpeded. No one knows exactly what the Locust God's original purpose was, not even the popular Amonkhet gods who slowly regain their memories, before they, kick the bucket. And perhaps we'll never know. What I do know though is that we have an amazing commander deck based around the story of this forgotten god. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Paul, take it away.
Whew, what a story. Alright, well, thanks, Seiben. Well, let's take a look at what sort of deck would be heralding the arrival of the Locust God. We're actually taking a quite different look at what an Izzet deck will usually want to do, which is drawing cards and playing big spells. The Locust God, however, will give us creature tokens for our card draws, not only giving us hand advantage, but field advantage too. As the more feet we get on the ground, the more damage we can swing around at our opponents. Well, I mean, tokens are all flying bugs, so I guess they're flying feet. Whatever. So the first thing we want to do is go to our card draw engine. We want to increase the number of cards we draw so we can spawn more locusts. Arcanus the Omnipotent gives us 3 cards on his own. Jin-Gitaxias gives us 7 cards at the end of each of our turns. Brainstorm basically gives us 3 creatures for 1 blue mana, which is incredible value. Distant Melody, an all-star in my Pauper Elves deck, will double our insect army as we draw a card for each bug. Recurring Insight will give us 2 instances of rather huge card draws, and of course, Enter the Infinite will give us all the bugs and then some. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind with this deck, like most decks that focus solely on drawing a bajillion cards, is overdrawing yourself into a loss. To address that, I aimed more at the draw spells that don't quite discard your hand to draw a new hand, but instead will return your hand to the library to draw a new hand. That way, at least I can temporarily avoid losing the game from a deck out, and I don't have to try to find ways of getting my cards back from my graveyard. That's not to say I don't run those kind of draw spells, I just don't use as many as I could. We do run some neat hand cycling cards such as Winds of Change, a nice 1-drop that will refresh our hand at whatever size it may be at. Time Reversal is also useful should we need to reclaim our graveyard as well. Molten Psyche can also become a massive burn spell if we get Chemetocraft online. Whirlpool Warrior gives us the effect twice, making her doubly useful. Since there's a good chance our opponents are going to want to draw cards off of our spells, let's take advantage of that by using Consecrated Sphinx to draw more cards off of them drawing cards. Chasm Skulker can take advantage of our card drawing shenanigans by growing bigger and bigger, and should they pop our squid, they have to deal with a bunch of tiny little squids. And if for some reason we run out of our deck, Laboratory Maniac serves as a nice emergency switch. Now then, we're making a gazillion tokens that fly, but let's make better use of them. Skull Clamp, enter the battlefield. This card is perhaps one of the best equipments in Magic's history, and it's going to be proven in this deck as well. So much so that it got itself banned in multiple formats. Seiben, you got any history on our little neck brace here?
Well, Skull Clamp comes from Darksteel, which was a set stuck in the original Mirrodin lore, not the new Phyrexian revamp all the kids are crazy about these days. No, here Memnarch was the big baddie, and one could guess the Skull Clamp was a device used by his associates to assert his dominance on the plane, spreading his influence and stretching his knowledge. Those who seek to control the mind and steal its secrets use this device. To them, the mind is a beautiful bounty encased in an annoying bone container. Hey, maybe these are what Nicol Bolas used on the old gods of Amonkhet. Yeah, that has to be it. Why else is the Locust God so much stronger and more manipulated than the originals, right?
So Skullclamp and Ashnod's Altar are both prime for this deck, as the two combine with the Locust God spawn by giving us infinite card draw, infinite mana, and infinite tokens, sorta. Well, we make a token, we clamp it, then we draw 2 cards, get 2 more bugs. Sacrifice 1 to the altar to get 2 colorless mana, and then use 1 mana to clamp the other bug. You get 2 more cards and 2 more bugs, and we can effectively do this as long as we have cards in our deck to draw into. Drop Perforos to burn everything at the table to death for an insta win. We can also use Impact Tremors to basically do the same thing. Psychosis Crawler reports for duty as well, and Throne of the God Pharaoh is a card that I find so much value in token decks, as every opponent will lose a good chunk of life if we have a ton of creatures tapped out at our end step. Mana Echoes can be good if we create a lot of creature tokens at once. We can also get a ton of mana from this. We will want our mana ramp up because of the high cost of a lot of these spells. To that end, we run a number of mana rocks to help us get up that ramp. Chrome Mox can be highly useful to get first turn, especially when you want that second mana at your disposal. Grim Monolith gives us 3 extra mana, and while I don't use it much after the ramp I get from it the first time, it is helpful to use extra mana I might have one turn later on to untap it. Izzet Signet, of course we will want, as Mana Crypt is good too. I know we're getting some expensive territory with some of the cards here, but again, if you want to build this deck to be fast enough, we will want to be able to put the investment in for the mana production. Just remember, our commander costs 6 mana, and yes, it's the same as the Niv Mizzets, but you will want this out as quickly as possible because he's sort of the core of our strategy here. Lastly, Thran Dynamo will round out our mana rocks. Now for our mana base, we will again want the most out of our lands. Lands like Ancient Tomb, Temple of the False God, Cascade Bluffs are all crucial. Remember, our commander costs 6 mana off the bat, not even counting if you will get him to have commander tax, so we will want him to hit the field as soon as we can. Your standard assortment of dual lands to help get us the red and blue mana, and then some utility lands like Reliquary Tower, which will give us an infinite hand size, Desolate Lighthouse, Skyreach Sanitarium, Mikikoro, just for some extra hand advantage.
Pretty sweet deck, man. Thanks for stopping by and sharing with us what you think a lore deck for EDH would look like focused on the Locust God. Hope you guys out there liked this combo video as much as we enjoyed making it. If you did, make sure you show your support in the comment section below. That way we can bring you even more in the future. You can also show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Extra points go to people who share it on the MTG subreddit. I'm banned because I'm a secret Bolas supporter, but you guys can share in his name. Anyway, everyone, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time here on the Aether Hub.